Hi, and welcome to AXSChat. We're delighted to have Steve Anderson with us today. Steve is the founder of Prime Candidate and is a champion for age diversity. Came across Steve about 12 months ago when we started talking about people working across generations within the workforce within my own organization. And we're lucky enough to have Steve come and speak at our Diversity Expo, which we held at Ethos earlier this year. So, Steve, it's great to have you with us. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and a bit about the work that you're doing to champion age diversity in the workplace?
Yeah, sure. I founded the organisation. This is our third year, actually. So pleased to get this far. And it really came out of some personal experience. We moved from London. I was working in London. My brief history of my career is I was 20 plus years in banking, international banking, working in London, New York, and somewhere in the Far East. I spent a lot of time in Tokyo in particular. I had a life changing event in 2004 where my wife became ill, so I took some time out to look after her. During that time, I found myself working on various projects with the local Chamber of Commerce, actually. And I found that skills and experience that I'd been utilising in the banking sector, I was transferring to projects from promoting farms to big retail developments to working with pharmaceuticals. And I'm saying this for a reason, because it's a lot of this is behind what we're doing now in terms of that transferability of skills and knowledge from one industry sector to another. And that led me to find work in an international research organisation, a not-for-profit organisation, where basically we took intellectual property and design again across the world, and working with vulnerable groups. In particular, the groups we were working with there were the very young and the very old. And I did a lot of work in mainland China, actually. So that whole outlook gave me a different perspective. So as well as my commercial element, as it were, plus my personal situation with my wife's illness, and then working for the research foundation, led to a situation just over about 4 years ago now, where unfortunately my wife became ill again, and we decided to move to the West Country to be near her parents. And I gave my job up in London, and we're now, say, near Bristol in the West Country, in the west of England. And I thought, well, it'd be okay. I'll find a job like I normally do, you know, through networking, through my own CV, which I thought was pretty reasonable. And I just turned 50 at the time, and I just found it incredibly difficult just to open up doors, open up avenues of conversation even. And I thought, well, is this just me, or is this, you know, what's going on here? And the more I looked into it, and I started doing some research, and that included going back to my old working colleagues and places of work, that both in the city and in the research and engineering side. And I found that actually there was an issue that became apparent about age, and that someone in their 50s was treated differently in terms of getting a fair crack of the whip, if you like, in terms of finding new employment. So I just looked at it more and more, and I'm never one to stand on the sidelines. I thought, you know, what could I do about this? And I thought, let's do something, because I could see there were problems both for people looking to return to work, but also employers that were missing out on great talent, great skills, great experience that would really benefit their organisation. So I decided to set up Prime Candidate. That was a name that just it wasn't built on anything. It just seemed to be appropriate, because what we wanted to do was join the dots of employer and people looking for work more quickly, more directly. So both ends of that equation would benefit. Where there were problems of people finding work, whether that's through traditional recruitment channels or just being overlooked because of discrimination, unconscious or otherwise. By the way, I think everything's conscious when it comes to discrimination. I don't think anyone does it unconsciously. And I say, from the employer perspective, to ensure that they were getting access to a demographic market that could actually add value to their business environment. And so I decided to set Prime Candidate up, and as a social enterprise, which is a particular structure that felt comfortable, because it takes the elements of the commercial elements of my background along with the not-for-profit elements of my vocational outlook, and really is a great foundation to do business from, to be sustainable. Took a decision quite early on, naively or otherwise, not to rely on any public money, any grants or anything like that. We want to be a sustainable organisation that has quality service that particularly the private sector would be happy to invest in and pay for a service that would help them achieve their objectives of having great people in their organisation. So we started off with a business plan 3 years ago, and it's probably changed completely since we started. In that great idea of bringing those two elements together was a great idea, and people got it, but getting employers particularly to change their practice of procurement, of ways of working, we just found really hard work. They got the concept of the diversity side of the age agenda, but we really find it difficult to engage with what we were doing. So rather organically, we thought, well, how can we capture that interest, that goodwill, whatever you like to call it, that understanding in the marketplace? So we decided to design the Champion Age Diversity charter membership. We call it various things depending on how organisations want to look at it. But basically, it's a employer program that engages an employer to certain behaviours, certain activities that mean they're doing something practical about the age diversity part of their policy and governance. Because generally you find, particularly in the large organisations that have the resources, they'll have their policy for diversity, and age will be on there, will be on that list. But to be honest, it's hardly attracted any attention whatsoever. So we're really challenging organisations to give it some attention, because it's really important, because it's actually the most important diversity agenda. But I would say that, wouldn't I?
Well, yeah. So I think we know that there's so many interlinkings between the various different diversity agendas. Obviously, age being a significant one, and age and disability being interrelated. We see that as people get older, they acquire disabilities, but it doesn't mean that they should stop working. I know Antonio's got a question, so I'll hand over to Antonio, and I think Deborah's queuing up afterwards. So
no problem.
So I'll hand over.
Okay, thank you, Neil, and it's great to have you here, Steve. And one of the things that we look to the workforce today is never in history of work we had so many different generations at the same time at the workplace. So, and we often read multiple articles about focus in one particular generation, and there's not really much of a conversation about talking about how can we have a good workplace and manage all these different generations at work. So I would like you to challenge you to what's your view on that in terms of the importance of managing well and taking advantage of having all these people, collaborating and changing ideas in one place.
You're absolutely right, Antonio, and it's something that we recognised quite early on in the development and the design of the Champion Age Diversity Charter, is that it was really important not to have an age diversity programme that was fit and useful for all age groups, not just the more mature older worker, but something that meant that all age groups, whatever their age, in that organisation, as you say, with ever increasing multi-generational age groups, that it was really important that everyone felt that they were included in that program. And so we were very clear as part of the criteria that we examined and decided to implement, that when an organisation considers age diversity, it's really considering just everyone in the workplace and everyone for opportunities to be retained in that environment, to receive training, retraining, reskilling as part of their personal development program that should be for everyone. Generally, you find training is given to the younger end of the demographic within the organisation. But guess what? It's one of those myths. Older people can learn things as well and continue that development process. And also the other R, retain, retrain, and is recruitment. So when an organisation has to consider recruitment, they are investing in a strategy that encompasses all elements of the demographic that is available to them. So we did recognise very quickly that for an organisation to be successful in managing those multi-generations within an organisation, the vision and mission of the organisation really needs to capture all of those individuals and to recognise all of those. And that's the Age Diversity Programme absolutely does that 100%. Because one thing, one of the regular issues that we find and that we're asked to support and help with organisations is the situation where maybe you have a younger manager who's looking maybe to recruit, and a CV will come in from maybe an older person who's got great experience, great knowledge, and there's almost a fear factor that manager has about recruiting or taking on that individual, because actually, are they better than that? Are they better than me? Are they gonna, is it gonna cause some issues there? So part of the process is to ensure that there's a common culture, a common understanding of those company values, where age diversity, it's for everyone in the organisation, to say, not just focus on any one of those, if like categories, whether it's a baby boomer or millennial, or we like to categorise people, don't we? But that can bring problems to the table if we always, well, that person's in that box, that person's in that box. Let's just have one open conversation and an environment that allows all generations to work together and learn from each other as well.
Yeah, I think that the sort of putting people in boxes because of when they were born is a false dividing line. A lot of it's attitudinal. And absolutely, I support your view that older people can learn and have an awful lot to give into any job.
There's lots of people out there like that. IT and old people don't mix. Well,
so I think that might have been the case 30 years ago, but IT's been around for such a long time now that the people that have the most experience in IT are the older generation, and they've absolutely learned the lessons the hard way, and what we don't get with youth is the experience. So I think we need a balance across the generations, and it's something that us as an organisation we are doing. We're very keen to retrain and retain people as well as just recruit. So there are efforts afoot to make sure that we do keep people and give them the right level of skills and relevant skills, because obviously technology moves on. The overall aptitude and attitude towards doing something in technology can be almost constant, but your need to maintain an up-to-date knowledge of the technology sets is what keeps you employable.
Absolutely.
So I think that that's really, really important. I'm going to hand over to Deborah for a second and let her ask the next question.
Well, I have some comments and questions. And I'll tell you a story too. I remember when I first entered the workforce, I was in the banking industry for 25 plus years, and there was a woman that was running a very large department, and she had never had children. She had never married. She had just given her life to her work. She loved her work. And around 55, I saw people force her out. And I remember thinking, wow, this woman has given her life for this company. And that was a long time ago. I'm older than that myself now, but we also know things like there are so many societies that are aging, and we know that people don't want to get their gold watch and go and sit home and not be relevant, because so many people we watched retire, and then a couple of months later they die. I mean, people want to be relevant. And so it's interesting to me, maybe because I'm older, when we talk about age, because of course it's very expensive to replace the talent, and the intellectual data that, people my age have can really contribute to the workforce, especially if we're conscious of being very careful of working with the multi-generations, because, the millennials, the Gen X's, all that add a lot of value as well. I also want to say that being from the United States, with 78 million Americans that are baby boomers, all over the age of 55 now, and we've completely always disrupted what was expected of us as we aged. But I would say, I would ask a cheeky question, is there a magical age when people can't contribute? Number one. I have my suspicions of that answer. Number two, as our societies age so progressively, I'll use Australia as an example, 30% of their workforce over the next few years are going to be the ones that have to work for everybody, provide taxes and everything that contribute to societies. It's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable in the US and other countries. So making sure that if people want to still contribute to the workforce, even as we age and become disabled, we still want to contribute to the world and society. How do we do that? And how do we do it in a way that benefits everyone, including the multi-generation? So I threw a lot at you, but it's a very important topic to me.
Yeah, in terms of, I think I remember the first question. Is there a golden age where someone should just stop? No. I think you were expecting that answer.
I did expect that.
In terms of, you're right, it's in terms of some of the examples you gave, it's a global challenge.
Yes.
But with challenge, there's always opportunity. I mentioned right at the beginning, I was fortunate enough to work across the world. And my job was basically managing resources and assets. And the most important asset anywhere is people.
Right.
And so I've been able, in my new role, to be able to reach out to a lot of organizations and individuals, old friends and colleagues, to ask them, what's going on where they are. And from Australia to China, to Japan, to continental Europe, to North America. I don't know anyone in South America, but in North America, I know quite a few people. And the problems are still there. That issue you talked about with a colleague or a friend, so many years ago, that's going on right now. Unfortunately, we hear stories every single day of individuals who are being discriminated against, who are being overlooked. A really good friend of mine recently is working in New York, 54 years old, ideal person for a promotion, completely overlooked. And they spelt it out in pretty stark terms. Why? Because he was in his 50s. So there's lots of issues. And just quickly, we have a US collaboration with an organization where we share information and guidance particularly on the employability side, so to help people with their path back to employment. And if I've got time, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the conversation, because we've got some exciting news coming up as well.
And I would just say one thing, to make a point, that I'm really glad you're in the U.S., so we want to talk. But what we find, there are people now, the average, many people are living into their 90s. Some people are living, I heard the oldest person is 120 years old. So 50 years old, that's middle age. And so, and I know we all age differently, our brain ages differently. I understand all that, but to decide that we're not good enough because we have a disability, because we're over a certain age, because we're under a certain age, because the color of our skin, because we believe in a different God, all of that is ridiculous. It really should be based on what we bring to the table as human beings. I know I'm preaching to the choir.
Absolutely right. And I think the answer is an evolving one, because, I think exact percentage, but a high percentage of newborns today are going to live into their hundreds, so a much higher percentage. So as you say, 50 becomes almost, negligible in that discussion. But I think what needs to happen is a change of practice, a practical change to the way of working. I think there's a lot of investment and money being spent on think tanks, on, let's consider this, let's consider that. We take a very different approach. We want to be absolutely practical about joining up the dots of why it's important for an employer, why it's valuable for an employer to reach out to this demographic, and to give people who are of an age now where they are not getting the opportunities that they should be getting, they have those opportunities open to them. And I think it's only through that change of behavior, change of practice, that we could even think about progression in an older generation. So the 50s of today, in 20, 30 years time, that's going to be probably at least 70, if not 80. So we've got a bit of time to put some foundations in place now that really engage employers, and this is why, and I would say this again, but it's really important to have that practical engagement with employers. They're the only ones that can make a difference. I say there can be these think tanks, there can be money invested in bits of research here, there and everywhere, and governments can issue papers about why it's a good thing. The UK government issued a paper this year, an evidence-based report about older workers, and it was all really positive, but there was a big but at the end of it, where employers, they get they get there's an aging population and it's a good thing, but they're not doing anything about it. They're not doing anything practical about it. So until we get that employee engagement, because without employee engagement, we don't have the jobs. We're not showing the jobs to the people that are looking for work. I firmly believe that you get those people back into the workplace, it will enrich the workforce, it will improve the multi-generational behaviours and activities within, to come back to Antonio's question earlier, it will improve that whole environment, and actually performance and productivity will improve. If that all happens, that organisation, that activity, that action, that behaviour becomes an employment generator. Generating employment opportunities for people, whatever their age, whether they're young, old, apprenticeships, coming out of uni, straight from school, whatever the situation is, you're creating an employment, you're rationing up the employment scalability to meet the demands of actually that extended generations, not just the old, but the younger people coming up through now, who, again, one of the myths is, the older people take the young people's jobs. It's just not true. In fact, if, as I was just saying, if we can get a good balance to the workforce, that will actually encourage more employment, for everyone. So I'm really positive about the opportunity, but things have to change.
Right, I agree. And one thing that I've seen happen in multiple countries, including the United States, is that I don't know why 50 seems to be the magic number when all of a sudden we're not employable, but a lot of people, especially in the United States in 2009, 10, and 11 with our financial crisis and so many Americans being laid off, I saw a lot of my friends that were over 50 and struggling to get in the workforce, get back in the workforce after being laid off, become entrepreneurs. And there became a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities and some really, really creative things. Is that a trend? And I know Antonio mentioned in the chat window, of course, it is about retention. Retention is very important in intellectual capital, but I'm just wondering if you're seeing the trends that we're seeing here with the becoming, an entrepreneur.
You're absolutely right, Debbie. You're absolutely right. Because of the lack of retention, and that's, I think, over a number of years, I think there's lots of reasons why the workforce has been lots of reasons why the workforce hasn't been able to retain that those skills and that experience, whether it's through government incentives, whether that's tax or training to focus on the younger end of the market. I think that's one element of it. I think recruitment agency practice is it's got a lot to answer for, but I won't get going on that. But I think over a period of time, people have left the workforce, and there's some really skilled people, some really professional people who are out there and want to contribute, they want to be involved, they want to work. So what's open to them? If those paths back into employment are blocked in various ways, what can they do? They can use that experience and set up niche businesses, small boutique consultancies, specialist organizations that then actually, quite interestingly, big organizations employ. I guess it's some sort of way of outsourcing, but I think it's happened by accident rather than design. And a lot of those organizations, those small micro businesses, are surviving quite well on that. In the UK, there's something like 5 million businesses. About 4.5 million of those are micro, so 1 to 10 people. So it's a huge trend, and one that probably has some ceiling at some point. I don't think it's there right now. But again, coming back to what we were talking about earlier, if employers decide to take different actions about retaining, and Neil talked about it with his own organisation, retaining staff, reutilising those skills and experiences, redeploying that knowledge and know-how, that intellectual property, into things maybe like product design, into enhancing the succession planning situation, for mentoring, for coaching. There's tons of ways of using that knowledge experience, as well as in just for technical competence in the workplace. Then I think you'll start getting more of a balance towards employers retaining that skill and recruiting that skill, and you get more of a balance where you'll still have individuals who are thinking more entrepreneurially and who want to have more control over their own destiny, whatever. But just on that front, another one of the myths is about flexibility in the workplace. As people get older, they need more flexibility.
And I think, but that's a great bonus for us in the way that we work now. One of the things that again, our own organization is actually pretty good at is flexible working, and the ability to work remotely. So I'm working from home on the South Coast. It's actually quite rare for me to go into the office, and we do have this flexibility. If I choose to get up early and do some of my work early, so long as I don't miss meetings, there's flexibility there for me to finish early or go off and do something in the middle of the day. So those kind of things, they're both good for people that are being entrepreneurial, but they're good for all generations, and they're particularly good in terms of enabling people with disabilities to be able to work, because you may have health reasons that preclude you from working the normal 9 to 5 hours or commuting to the office or whatever, but you can still contribute to the business as a whole. Absolutely,
Neil, and you hit the nail on the head. It's flexibility in the workplace is required by everyone, and you gave a few examples of the type of individual that may need that or want that, or it would be helpful for. But young families, people that want to have a balance their life work styles, more, want to spend more time with their kids. It's not just an older person thing. It's not just a disability thing. It's not just a carer thing. It's something that organizations should be more open and flexible to, because it creates a much happier workforce.
Absolutely, and it's been absolutely great talking with you. I don't know whether Antonio wants to close. We need to remember to say thank you very much to our friends at Barclays for keeping the lights on and helping us with the captioning, etc.
And they're one of our champions as well. So no, thank you, Barclays.
No, I was just adding as well, because something that happened with me about a year ago. I was at an event in Dublin last year, and I was chatting with different people at the event, and a young lady an advertising company was chatting with us, and she was end up saying this. Well, the company where I work, everybody's in the same average, so I'm not able to find a mentor because everybody has the same experience than I have. No, they all start their careers here. Nobody has, nobody has much to share with me besides that. And I really miss the fact that I would like to have a conversation with someone with a different background, coming from, passing to different experience in life. And I don't have anyone around. So when I have opportunity to network, I just come in and try to find people who actually can represent that group.
Absolutely, Antonio. And one of the things we do as part of our employability program that runs in tandem with the employer program is to get individuals to open up their minds, to diversify their skills into different sectors. I gave my own personal experience of moving from banking sector into a research sector. I did mention that for a reason. And the employers that we work with, we also get them to think about that as well, because you just said it, employers can benefit from someone with a different maybe vision or different set of skills that they can utilize in a different sector, in a different workplace, and combining those skills with people already in the workforce can be really positive and productive.
100% agree. So sorry for getting you video bombed by the dog. He is here proving that white hair is no barrier to working. Thank you very much again, Steve. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. We're looking forward to you joining us. One more thing,
it's a bit of a plug, but we've got some exciting stuff going on with Prime Candidate. In that, as of 1st of December, it's been rolled up into the Age Diversity Forum, which is a way to extend and coming back to the international aspect that we talked about with Deborah. It's a real opportunity and vehicle to engage more internationally. We're certainly extending that in the US, and we're also looking to extend into Australasia and Hong Kong as well. So it's a same purpose, the same structure, the same vision, the same understanding. I guess it's sort of rebranding to do more, I guess, what it says on the tin.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. And definitely going to the Far East where they're super aged already is a smart move. Absolutely. Thank you once again, and we'll see you on Twitter.
No, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.